Hello and welcome to another Thursday interview here on Viking.TV with me, Anne Diamond. Now this week I want you to meet someone who, when he comes on stage and greets his audience, he really doesn't mind at all if they only know him as the one with the hair, or confess straight away that they're not much into what he does, classical piano. In fact, he loves it and he sees it as a challenge, one which he invariably wins. He is not only a successful and seriously trained musician, but also a sheer entertainer. Be warned, say the critics, his performances can be interactive. Do not expect to always sit still, and do be assured that you will leave the concert hall or theatre doing something you might not have expected to do. You'll be laughing and smiling, and you may have learned a weird thing or two about the world's most famous composers. Here he is when he was on the Viking Sky just recently.
The Flight of the Bumblebee, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, there's a flourish that Rimsky-Korsakov might not quite have anticipated. And the hair. When I first saw him, I thought, wow, he's the Brian May of classical music. If you got them together on stage, you'd just see a flurry of tousled hair, but you'd also hear terrific music. So with no more ado, please welcome the pianist with the hair, Julian Gargiulo, who joins us from his home now in Brussels. And a very warm welcome to you.
Hi, Anne. It's great to be here with you. Thank you. And thank you for showing me what I sound like in concert. I never listened to my own videos, so it's always frightening.
That's interesting because I was watching you whilst you were watching it. And I thought, how do you feel when you watch yourself playing the piano like that? Do you only see what you might have fluffed? Not that I'm suggesting you fluffed anything. Or can you appreciate it, or are you just completely critical?
Completely critical. But it was funny, that you mentioned the ending there, which I just recently added, and seems to be enjoyed by all. I don't even know if many people realize that that's not the ending. But.
But it does. It actually sets the tone, doesn't it? The audience then understand what you're about. But before we talk about that, because your performances are pretty unique, you are a seriously classically trained musician. I know you were born in Naples. What point did you realize that you had what could be a serious classical future?
Well, I'm in a family that's not a musical family, really, although my parents loved music. I have an older brother and a sister, and they both got piano lessons, but my parents decided to not waste more money on me because I was one of these disorganized kids. So I always played by ear. And then when I was 13, I really started getting more and more into it. And we were living in Verona in northern Italy at the time. And so I decided to try to get into the conservatory there. And even though I didn't know how to read music, I could just play by ear. And you were supposed to prepare a whole program of stuff. They accepted me. And I did meet a very, very inspiring teacher. And it was funny how I have this radical change from when I'm 13, up to 13, and then after 13. And then after 13, very quickly, I was at the piano 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I would come home from school. My mother would prepare food, and I would be literally eating with one hand and playing the piano with the other. That's all I did. It helped that I was not very successful socially. So, in fact, I always think if I had been more successful socially, I'd never become a pianist, because now I'm so, I love people, and that happened after I went to, to study in Moscow, oddly enough. But yeah, very distinct segments of my life. Strange. And I need to be studied by a team of scientists. I'm sure that will happen at some point.
It will happen one day, I'm sure. But I mean, as I say, you were very seriously trained, and that's important because that's what you rely on now, your ability to perform those pieces. But then at some point you also decided, or maybe it evolved, how did you come to inject entertainment into your performances?
So yeah, I was a pianist just like any other pianist who would, come out in a smoking jacket or tails and sit down and play, and they would clap hopefully at the end, and then I'd leave. And it did change, it did evolve, and what you see now when you come to a concert is, and it continues to evolve. But for sure, I think the turning point happened. I did a few performances in the States where the presenter asked if I could talk to the audience and tell them a little bit about what I was doing. And at that point, I was already the me who you see before you now, who's not very serious and can be so with everybody. So I just told them about the composers, but not in a very serious way. And they laughed, and I hooked. And then I it was like a drug, and so it grew from that. Now for me, as you're saying at the beginning, and it is interesting because this is quite recent. A concert for me starts around 15-20 minutes before the actual concert, because I never come in from backstage. I always hang out with the audience before the concert, and so people are in their seats and they see me, and I go around and I talk to people, and that's when the show actually has started. People don't realize it, but and then I jump onto the stage to start the show. The recent back trouble has made that more challenging.
Well, that's interesting because I know that you're very passionate now about convincing people who think of themselves very much not as classical music buffs. You sort of see it as a bit of a challenge, and you clearly get that from talking to people before. I'll bet you people say to you, "I'm not sure why I'm here. I'm not really into classical music," and you get that idea of how to entertain them.
You're absolutely right. I mean, of course, the niche of classical music is just that, but I very strongly feel that it's music that can be loved by everybody. Maybe not an entire Mahler symphony, but certainly part of the repertoire is for everybody, and I want them all to like it, and I want them all to leave. In fact, if I have the chance, I do ask the audience. I say, "Be honest. Are you a regular classical concert goer? Please raise your hand." Very few people. Are you an occasional concert goer? A few more. And then I'm like, are you only at a gunpoint concert goer? Which usually gets a laugh, and most people raise their hand because nobody goes to concerts. I mean, very few go to classical concerts. But then at the end, that's the comment I love to receive most. It was so different from what I expected.
I was so surprised. I loved it. Yes. And I know you even do things like getting the audience to time you as you play the minute waltz.
Sure. Yeah. I do that. I do that. That anything that can get people more involved, asking them questions, what they think about things. I talk about the minute waltz, and does it last a minute, and does anybody have a Rolex? And I ask Rolex because they run slow. And then we time it, and it doesn't last a minute because it's really the minute waltz, but everybody's happy to do it. Of course, people try to stop at a minute.
Yeah, everybody comes away with something then, don't they? Not only have they appreciated the music and loved the entertainment, but they come away with a little fascinating fact that other friends don't know, that actually the minute waltz was never meant to last only a minute.
Well, I think people are really happy to learn. You know, if you tell them this is a class, now you're going to learn, they don't want to learn. But if they can have fun and learn kind of almost by mistake or, you know, unaware, then they're very happy to leave and say, oh, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Exactly. So you evangelize in a way whilst you're on stage, but also very much online, because I know you and your wife Electra have started this series of videos called One Classical Minute, which, by the way, I've watched a lot of, and they last more than 1 minute because I've timed them. I've got that sad. But you pack a lot of info into that minute. Who
Well,
has the ideas for these? Who edits them? Because they're brilliantly edited.
they are joint productions, and at the very basic level, you know, like we'll take a composer, so it's, you know, it's biographical, but the ideas definitely evolve, and we talk about things, and then we get sillier and sillier, and you know, and find something, and then the editing happens. We do it all together, and I'm the one in front of the camera. And of course, I'm the one, you know, but we usually take a composer and a piece, and the piece runs through the episode,
Yeah.
and you see me playing in various moments. But it's mostly, you know, fun facts about the composer. So you learn. I think that they'd be a great starting point, even, you know, for a teacher to you know, teach kids about,
Yeah.
you know, this is Beethoven. This is the episode on Beethoven, and now let's take out, you know, in which period was he living, and what was happening. Like, if you wanted to break these episodes out into much bigger segments, even though I say they are more than a minute already.
They are more than a minute, and it must take much more than a day to do all the filming just for that 1 minute. That's what makes it so lively.
Yes, they do.
There's a lot.
They do take time, and I mean that was a project that happened during COVID, when there were no performances, and in fact, we haven't done a minute in more than a minute in a while. But we did enjoy them so much. I mean, at some point we were thinking, oh, this would be a great project to somehow sell to someone, but we're still in the marketing phase on that one. But
Well, absolutely. But you can see them on YouTube if we go to your YouTube site, as it were. Should we have a look at one of your 1 minute wonders? This is the video about Debussy. Have a look at this.
This is Julian, pianist with the hair, and this is One Classical Minute. Let's get moving. Everyone knows Clair de Lune, but perhaps you don't know so much about Debussy, the man. He was a dashing young hipster loved by the ladies, engaged to be married to Gaby Dupont, until Gaby cleverly throws a party where Debussy meets Lily, Gaby's best friend and supermodel. So it's bye Gaby, hi Lily. Debussy marries Lily, only to discover a few years later that conversation's not as stimulating as he'd hoped. Also, she's not aging well. He goes out for a pack of smokes and never comes back, but does leave her this. Heartbroken, Lily goes to Place de la Concorde to commit suicide, shoots herself, and misses. Perhaps Debussy was onto something. She lands in the hospital. Debussy refuses to pay the bills. You know, he was a very forward-thinking man. Debussy ends up with Emma. He just wasn't a very happy man, or he's sitting on something sharp. I hope I haven't ruined the piece.
See, I love stories like that. It makes the music live somehow, to know that composers weren't just dry old people from the past. They were human beings with real human stories.
yeah, that is so true, and I think that is in a way the idea behind it. Basically, give people a couple of little interesting facts so that they get a little bit more interested and hooked.
I know my music teacher once told me about Purcell, the English composer Purcell, and said that he would be revered now as one of the greatest composers of all time had he not gone out so often and gotten drunk. And his wife got so fed up with him. In the end, she locked him out of the house. He had to sleep on the doorstep. It rained. It was very cold. He got pneumonia and died. And that always really interested me about the composer and his music.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's how we are.
Yeah.
We latch. It's funny. I tell people, because obviously, in a way, when I do a show, it's almost as if it's like a promo about me and my life and everything that's about my life. So I tell them, COVID, we started this video series, and you may not have heard of One Classical Minute, but during the pandemic, it really became quite a thing. And at the moment, I think worldwide we have something like 16 subscribers.
Oh, you'll have more now. You'll have more now. Tell me about your family, because as you just said, you often like to include stories about them in your performances. Who are they? How many are there? Where do you live now? What's family life like?
I like to think that I live very distinct lives in a way, because when I'm home, I'm very, very much about the family. And of course, when I'm gone, I'm not. I remember I was leaving for a tour in the States at the beginning of September, and the morning that I was supposed to leave, I was cooking pancakes for the kids, and it was I mean, it's great. The kids are amazing. My son, he just turned 5 yesterday, was his birthday, James, and our daughter Nikita. I don't know why I said my son and our daughter, but I'm sure a psychiatrist could have a feeling. Nikita is 9 and going on 21 or something, but it's they really challenge you every step of the way and drive you crazy.
But there's always something to talk about in your performances. I'll steer us towards the video that we took on the Viking Sky when you were performing there in front of a Viking audience, and you were telling them about practicing, because practicing is what pianists are all about, practicing, but with a young baby. I'll let everyone take a look at this because it's gorgeous.
We're going to turn off all the lights, and it's going to be kind of like a movie theater in here, and I think the captain will be around with popcorn shortly.
How lovely to be able to play like that, to mix those two tunes together as well as you do. It's almost Mozartian, that, isn't it? He was able to do that.
Of course, yeah. I do tell them the story that it was impossible to practice, and I say so I came up with a way of tying my daughter, and then I show them the video of putting her there. And I did for a while with both of them, practice that way.
Yeah. And they must have heard so much music all their lives. Are they showing any sort of musical talent themselves? They must be.
Which must explain the resentment. No, I mean, do they show any musical talent? They, I, I'll take the fifth on that. No, I mean, they like to come over and play, especially more my daughter, and my son, when he sees her, he comes too. I think more out of spite than anything else. But it's interesting how he has developed spite before any other trait. But I started late, so I have a lot of people ask me, "Oh, are you getting them piano lessons? Are you teaching them?" And I'm very laid back on that because I didn't have it myself. I was kind of left to my own devices. So I think it's important to let kids discover things on their own.
Let them do their own thing. But you have, I mean, like you said, I find it amazing that for the first 13 years, you didn't know how to read music and you learned to talk through the piano your own way. I know you're seated at a piano right now. Do you talk through the piano? Do you sit down and relax and just play things that come into your mind?
I very much am someone who does sit down and improvise. I write a lot of music. We'll talk about it hopefully later, this competition that I run. But I do write a piece of music for that. So I'm trying to finish this song cycle because the competition is for voice this year. So I'm finishing a song cycle at the moment and trying to spend every waking moment when the kids are not around doing that.
Well, give us a flavour, please do. Just a flavour.
I can give you. Let's see. I will give you a flavor of. I don't know if this works.
Excellent.
But this is from another song cycle. But.
Oh. Oh, that was lovely. That really was beautiful.
That's a song from the previous song cycle.
Yeah, sounds like a song. It sounds lovely. Do you look upon your gift as a gift? Or, I mean, I know it's blinking hard work and practice is something you've talked about before as well. And I know you've put your life into it, but do you also see it as a gift or a burden?
I think I'm gifted in the sense that I'm so lucky because I do get to do what I love to do, and not only is it the way I make my living, because already that would be a lot, but I finish these concerts and the people are just the audience is just so happy. Kind of, it feels like such a privilege to be able to do something where at the end you finish and people are like, thank you, you made me happy, you made me smile, and I guess in my case, rather than maybe other normal work, I do it through humor as well. So they like the music. You might play something like Debussy, Clair de Lune that we heard before, which is something that I think so many people know and love, and when you play it, you do hear a difference in the way people are listening, and the, you know, so you can bring them to a certain place where they're really, you know, maybe they have a memory that they connect that piece with. So it's a very intimate thing in a way, even though sitting in the audience, they're all together, but they're all in their own separate little space. They've, if you're doing it right, you're taking them on their own individual journey. But then also afterwards to be able to be, you know, sarcastic and just, you know, make a joke, and everybody comes back and then they're, you know, happy. And I don't know, it's a wonderful thing to be able to let people escape life, like, you know, the worries and everything for an hour or two.
Yes.
And like take a vacation from their stress.
Yes. And if they go away uplifted, and if you can hear an audience going out buzzing, you know you've done your job, don't you? Yeah. You've sent us some lovely pictures of your family. Can we have a look through? Not just your family, actually, of lots of people that you've met along the way. Let's talk us through them, if you will. We'll have a look at them now. That is the family, yes?
That is the family, yes. That is in Paris. So that's I think maybe 6 or 7 months ago. My wife and the two kids, Nikita and James. There's my lovely wife, Electra. Very close to the school where we used to go to. Electra is Greek, and we met in New York. And it's great to have kids, because yesterday I was telling my daughter as she was going to bed how we met, and how she would finish work and I would run to meet her, and we would like meet on the Upper West Side in New York. And so from my left, that's my daughter Nikita.
Now 9.
The three of us, they're one on top of the other in the middle on a Greek island. I believe it was Kythnos, where we went on vacation, my wife being Greek, and she used to work as a travel journalist for the main Greek newspaper. And so she really knows the islands well. And there's my little James, who is firmly convinced he's one of the superheroes.
He has plenty of attitude by the look of it. And then along the way, all of the people that you have met in your career, and they've spanned from, wow, that's Philip Glass?
That's Philip Glass at a rehearsal in New York.
Yeah.
And it was great meeting him. It was funny because when we met, he was like, a fellow composer. He said, it's great to meet the competition. So I thought that was quite humble, nice thing, you know, for him to say.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've met others too. Some very famous names. Well, that's the former mayor of New York, isn't it? That's Michael Bloomberg.
That is Michael Bloomberg, yes. That's me asking him for a loan, probably.
Well, he could afford it. And then, oh my goodness, the John Williams.
John Williams, who I met, as you can see, I'm ever so slightly younger. I'm in the United States in Tanglewood, when I was in Tanglewood many years ago, and he was just a wonderful person.
Oh, that's one of those photographs to hang on to, isn't it? Because he's a legend. But your hair, much more normal.
Much more normal. You know, I grew up. Well, first of all, I don't think I sent you that picture, but there is a picture. Obviously, many pictures, because I used to have very straight and very blonde hair. Yeah, unbelievably. But then my hair was just very short until I went to study in Moscow, where I just stopped cutting it, and it kind of grew the way it is now. But then for many years, when I was living in New York, I always had it in a ponytail, so it was just kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know.
But the tousled look suits. The tousled look suits.
Yes, as you were saying at the beginning, yeah.
I hope you saw that as a compliment, me saying you might be the Brian May of classical music.
Oh, absolutely. I love Queen, and Brian May was such a amazing, multifaceted person.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting too? Yeah.
Very big compliment. Thank you.
Now, your experiences with your family even lead you to compose music for them or about them. I'm sure this isn't the only example. This is one that you talked about when you were on the Viking Sky. You tell the story about how you nearly lost Nikita when you were out simply buying some bread, and then you can hear the panic in the music that you then composed. Tell us what happened.
I do tell that story and play that piece because I think it's again, something that almost anybody who has kids can relate to. Losing sight or losing your child, even if just for a couple of seconds, and how horrific it is. So I was just out in the busy Parisian streets with my daughter, who was, I think, maybe 3.5 or 4 at the time, and I looked down and she wasn't there, and you know, it was terrifying. It was terrifying.
Well, we've got this little video from when you were on the Viking Sky, playing the piece that you then called Finding Nikita.
In the very busy streets, I suddenly look down, and Nikita is gone. And it was really, really terrifying. I assure you, those next few minutes were horrible. So this piece that I wrote, this next piece, is a piece about that experience, about losing Nikita. It's called Finding Nikita. You'll tell me by the way it ends if you think I found her or not. And then I'm going to follow that piece. You're not going to know this piece because I wrote it. But the next piece, I think you'll all recognize it. So first the Finding Nikita, and then the well-recognized one. Because I knew that if I got home with just the baguette,
And very clearly you found her and all was well. Phew. So what is everyday life like now? Oh, I knew I wanted to ask you. I think you were living in Paris when Notre Dame burned, and you could actually see that all from your apartment.
Yes, that is another experience that I do try to share with the audience, because I think it's one of those moments when the entire world felt or was watching the same strange, surreal almost thing. I was at home and at home with the kids, and so I show the audience basically what I was filming from the window. Yeah. And tell them that I was home with the 2 kids, and just how surreal the kids, you know, they see this every day from their bedroom, this amazing Notre Dame, and it's suddenly in flames. And I knew I had to record this. This was history. I had to record it. At the same time, I was home with the very little kids who were trying to literally climb out the window. So I quickly realized I could either keep filming or save the kids. Dramatic pause. So I kept filming, and that usually gets. So I kept filming, but yeah, and then I show them how the whole roof burned off, and now we can actually see the Pantheon behind, peeking. You could only see it a fraction. Now you can actually see the whole thing. So of course the French landlord raised the rent, but
of course, yeah. And they are successfully rebuilding it. I know we've already done an episode here on Viking TV about the work that's going in there now. And I think President Macron has promised that it will be finished by 2024. So we'll see. But you're living in Brussels now. So, I mean, what language do your children speak? All of them?
That's a good question. So even though I don't necessarily sound it, I was born and raised in Italy. So my father is from Naples and my mother was from New York, and I went to an international school. But I grew up speaking both languages, and I chose to speak to the kids in Italian. Useless language, but whatever. So I speak to the kids only in Italian, and my wife, who's Greek, speaks to them only in Greek.
Oh my God.
And my wife and I, we met in New York, and so our common language at home is English.
Mm.
The kids grew up in France and now in Belgium, and so I've always gone to the French school. So they do speak all four languages. It's very interesting to see them go between one and the other.
Yeah.
For school, of course, like reading and writing, it's more comfortable for them in French.
Yeah.
But neither my wife, neither of us are, speak French natively at all. I mean, we can both speak French because, we've been here for a while, but we never speak French at home. So the kids never speak French at home. We don't really get to hear them speak French. Every now and then, though, we hear them.
Yeah, well, if they want to get away with something without their parents knowing, they could speak French to each other, really, couldn't they?
They could, absolutely.
Well, music is the eternal language, I suppose. Maybe they're probably very good at that too. Now, musicians always find a way around things, and I know you make a joke in one of your concerts that the pandemic was terrible for many, and being locked down, not being able to go out and about and play music to people must have been awful for you. But you make the joke that musicians are used to being out of work. But so many musicians during the pandemic did find a way to play together virtually, didn't they? And clearly you did that too, because I've seen a lot of clips of you in one place and somebody you're playing with, a cellist or a violinist, playing in another part of the world, but you're playing together.
Yes. Of course, it had to happen because there was, no other way to do it. Those clips are possible. It's quite. It's not as simple as it looks. Those clips that you're seeing, Anne, they are from the competition that maybe we'll talk about later.
Yeah, no, let's talk about it now. Talk
about it now. So basically, to do that, because the conversation we're having now, it's in a way, I guess, easier to have a conversation. But because music is so much about timing, it would be possible to just perform together at the same time during like a Skype call or something like that. So to make it really high quality, I recorded the piano part, and then I sent them the piano part, which they listened to with headphones. And as they were listening to the piano part, they recorded themselves playing the violin part or the cello part. Then they sent that back to me. Those two recordings, separate recordings, were sent to an engineer and put together. And then, ta-da, it looks all beautiful and simple and easy.
Sounds spectacular. We've got a very short clip, which probably illustrates that point, of a violin sonata, which I think is your composition, isn't it?
Yes, so that's a composition that's very, very near and dear to me. It was written during COVID, and it was also the last thing that my mom, who passed away in 2020, heard as I was working on that piece, and she listened to it in the living room and loved it. And so it's very, very, obviously it's an emotional thing for me. And I called the piece From the Window because we were all seeing life from the window because everybody was locked down.
Yeah.
And this is the last movement of that piece.
And this is the young violinist Maria Duenas. Is that how you say it?
Maria Duenas, who won the competition.
Oh, wow. Well, we've only got a short clip, but let's enjoy this. My goodness, she's good, isn't she? No wonder she won.
She's wonderful. And in fact, in July I was in Vienna and we recorded the whole sonata with her because she had only played the fourth movement. And so it's going to be released soon. The engineer is still doing the final touches on it, but pretty much done. We made a video recording in a very beautiful hall in Vienna. So I'm very excited about that.
So tell me how this competition got going. You called it at first Getting to Carnegie, and I think now it's called the world's biggest stage competition ever.
Yes, without the ever. But yeah, so my idea was to make a competition called Getting to Carnegie, where the first part would be online, and then the actual final round would take place at Carnegie Hall. And so the idea was, everybody was getting to Carnegie, and but also Carnegie Hall is a metaphor for
success.
For success, especially as a musician. It's a place that really people dream of playing, and so it kind of started just as my idea, and I just said I'm going to make it very democratic. Whoever wants to apply, there's no application fee, which is kind of unheard of in music competitions. And then the other original idea about it was that there's no professional jury. So the final round happens at Carnegie Hall, and then the audience that's present decide the winner, and the winner is awarded the prize. So that's how it started. And then we also eventually we formed a board, and and a lot of people, Emmanuel Ax, a lot of big names, the Avery Fishers from Avery Fisher Hall, Lincoln Center, they became big patrons of the whole idea. And so it happened there for like seven years. Then at some point, Carnegie Hall, for whatever reason, decided that they didn't like that we were using Carnegie Hall. And anyway, we'll do the second episode all about that. But so anyway, so decided that especially because of the pandemic, we moved it online, and we realized that since my whole thing is about classical music, everybody can enjoy, I thought, it's online, and the audience grew like astronomically. And also because we had the help of the Violin Channel, which is the foremost place where classical musicians get their news. And so the person who created the Violin Channel, which is this huge thing in classical music, you might not know about it, but the person who created it is this brilliant guy, Jeffrey John Davies. He became a super fan of what I do, and he's on the board. And so he streams everything through the Violin Channel, and he does it for free. Like he's an amazing guy. And so we have this synergy, and we decided, you know what? The internet is the world's biggest stage. So why don't we change the name to the world's biggest stage? And that will be the competition. And so, in a sense now, it's not so much about where the actual performance takes place, but more about the fact that it's going out to the world, really, as opposed to, one specific concert hall.
That's really interesting, because I was going to ask you anyway about how important the internet is now to a professional musician, that you have to promote yourself. That, I mean, I've noticed you do it a lot, and it is clearly the way forward for concert musicians to become known, to get themselves very well known, but also to show some personality, I guess. But the internet is that important to you guys.
You're quite good at this, Anne. I love how you just string one thing into the other. You're you're good. Yeah, the internet, definitely very important, because especially nowadays, I think that even people that never would have used the internet, like older musicians, have also realized that that's the way to get the music out there to people. If you're really not interested in your audience, and you're just doing the music just for yourself, maybe there are a few people that don't care so much, but for me it's very important, and I think for so many people it's important, and because it's such a fast evolving thing, in a way, you always have to be on top of it. So you always have to be thinking up new things and new ways to engage people, but it's fun. It's
Which brings us back to another classical minute. I fancy another one. How about this one? This is Chopin.
This is one classical minute with Pianist with the hair. Frédéric Chopin, poet of the piano and the world's most famous expat, leaves Warsaw at age 20, headed for Italy, but due to social unrest and a clever travel agent, ends up in Paris instead.
Not a fan of the Paris metro or crowds in general, he seldom leaves home, preferring the intimacy of playing in his own living room for friends. He gives only 30 public performances in 30 years of concertizing.
Was it laziness, a bad agent, or did he simply price himself out of market?
I don't get out of bed for less than $500,000.
Known for his fragile health, he escapes the frigid Paris winter with his LGBT precursor partner friend George Sand, repairing to the romantic getaway island of Majorca. His 24 preludes, which were composed there, are fraught with the deep anguish and emotional turmoil of her decision to bring along the kids. While Chopin never makes it back to his homeland, and is in fact buried here, the famous Père Lachaise cemetery, he requests for his heart to be FedExed back instead. Was it his fear of being buried alive? Or was he simply taking advantage of lighter airport restrictions? Over 3,000 people show up for his funeral at the Church of the Madeleine, from as far as London, Berlin, and Vienna. Fortunately, due to obvious circumstances, he's able to avoid this final crowd. We bid you farewell with his Fantasy Impromptu, a classic child recital favorite, which not surprisingly, he asks to have burned as a dying request.
Our viewers, are going to want to know a bit more about that. Is that true about Chopin's heart?
Yeah, it is true. He had this fear of being buried alive, and his heart was somehow gotten out and smuggled back into Warsaw, and it's in a church there now. And of course, he's in Père Lachaise in Paris, but the heart is back in Warsaw, which is something that he wanted. And it's also true about the piece the Fantasy Impromptu, that he wanted to have it burned. And actually his student, the one that he asked to burn it, was named Julian, which is, far, but it was his student Julian. So,
well, I'm glad they kept copies.
So, make sure you have a good probate lawyer.
Yeah. Talking of bits of Chopin, I was always told that he had, given that his music it needs such incredibly large stretches, and it really is very demanding finger-wise, I'm told that he had surprisingly small hands. Is that true, do you think?
Well, they say that, from the images that I've seen, they're not very big, but they were the fingers were quite long and very, very flexible, and, could do things. But I don't, as a pianist, you don't necessarily need huge hands. Now, somebody like Rachmaninoff had very, very big hands. Rachmaninoff, I could show you, if it's okay. I'm going to move this just one more time. So Rachmaninoff, I don't know if you can see well.
Yes.
Rachmaninoff could play C, E flat, G, C, G, but he could play that as a chord, which of course I can't. But I do have quite a large extension. Now, it's not really necessary to have such a crazy large, hand to be able to play pieces that are very, very. There's one, like for instance, his first etude, Chopin's first etude. I could show you again. So if I put this here on, can you see? Yeah. So Chopin's first etude is this, and it's all about these very large stretches. But for me, it's easier to play it, of course. But for somebody that has smaller hands, even if you have a smaller hand, if you're able to rotate your hand, you can still do it. And of course, if you're able to rotate your hand and also practice for 50,000 hours, probably.
Oh, yes. Well, that's what piano teachers always tell you. Never mind about how wide your span is. It's technique that does it, and practice. I love the way you play on stage, and this is clearly an idea that you're playing with now. You play on stage, and we see your thoughts back projected. Great idea. When did you come up with that one?
That was something that I think I was in Florida, and I was doing a concert in a university for kids, for university kids, and I just thought it would be funny to do, and so I came up with this. It was very different at the time what I had written, and I've changed it. It's very easy now that so basically I don't know if you're gonna if the idea is to show it.
Should we show it first, and then you can tell us how? Obviously, yes, you can change it. You can tailor it to almost any audience. You can get
Exactly.
You can get rude and silly if you want to, or you could be very prim and proper. So this is another video taken from your audience on the Viking Sky, and this is you playing the Je m'y prédis by Satie. There's even a story about that too, isn't there? With this lovely back projection. Let's have a look. perfectly tailor-made for that audience. I thought it was lovely, absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
So what of the hair? I mean, where did the hair come from? I know it grows out of your head, but clearly at some point you thought, well, people are beginning to talk about I'm the one with the hair, so let's make something of it.
It was my sister who gave me the idea, but I had heard it a lot also. So it comes from the fact that my last name is Gargiulo, which it's possible to pronounce Gargiulo, but if you see it written, it doesn't look like it sounds like Gargiulo. So when you see words that don't, anyway, it's not memorable to see it written for sure. So what I did hear a lot was, it was the pianist with the hair, the guy with the hair, the pianist with the hair. So my sister said, why don't you just become the pianist with the hair? Like,
yeah.
So that's kind of that's where it came out of, and I think it does work. And then this friend of mine made this great logo for me, pianist with the hair, with the glasses, and which I'm not wearing right now, but it's just basically glasses and hair, and
it gives you a great silhouette profile when you're on stage. I mean, wow, it looks really quite something.
Yeah, and actually the on stage on that cruise on the Viking, they decided to invert the image, so that it's really white on black, but they made it black on white because it's too bright.
It's a very powerful image. Oh, and very quickly before we leave Satie behind, because that was his Gymneo Predi. Is that right that Satie? I got this from one of your 1 Minute Wonders. Is Satie only wrote that, nothing else? The berry.
No, he did write stuff. He did write some stuff that is maybe more questionable. But I think that he's most famous probably for his 3 gynopédies, which all have the same feel. That melancholic, slow, very beautiful. What you just heard, basically, they're slightly different, but they're very similar in a way.
Oh, lovely! Yeah, they are. Now, what's the movie that one's from?
That's a question I get. It's actually, it's not really from any big blockbuster famous movie. People are always disappointed. It's one of those things that everybody has heard because it's in episodes of The Simpsons, and it's in advertising, and it's pervasive somehow, and also it's very memorable in a way. But it wasn't like, I don't know, the Scent of a Woman, like the tango from Scent of a Woman, that it's like, oh, it was in that movie, or stuff like that. But yeah,
you must get a lot of questions like that too. What movie is that from? And you think, hang on a minute, the poor composer actually meant it as a piece of music. But it is beautiful, and there are loads of other beautiful compositions that you cover in those 1 Minute Wonders, as I've called it. What did you call it? 1 minute. What did you call them?
Not one classical minute.
1 classical minute. That's it. Yes, I highly recommend to everybody watching. So, what of the future? I know you're involved with the Island Music Festival, the Water Island Music Festival on St. Thomas. Is that still happening?
Yes, that's happening in January. So in January, I'm going back to the States because we're having this the world's biggest stage competition. In fact, I have to urgently finish the song cycle called what is my song cycle called? It's called Love, War, and Other Viruses.
Woo!
And I'm doing that, and then I'm going to be doing a couple of concerts in the States, and then doing that festival in Water Island, which is now in its 17th year. So that has been going on for a while. It's basically a festival that is classical and jazz, and it happens over a couple of nights, and it's really an excuse for me to get together with some of my musician friends in a very tropical climate during the month of January, which is not a bad idea.
No, it's a very, very good idea. It sounds like a dreamy existence. I know it's hard work, but it sounds dreamy. Thank you so much for being with us today. I mean, we've spoken for ages, and we've heard your wonderful talent actually at the piano, and we all dream. I think those of us who learned to play the piano when we were kids never got to anything remotely like you, but we all envy you. But given that we can't play like you, it's nice to come along and actually hear you play and to watch you play and to hear you perform and entertain. It's been an absolute delight for us here on Viking TV today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. It's really been a pleasure for me.
And keep the hair growing. Keep the hair growing. It's great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. It's lovely to meet you. Well, there you are. I told you it'd be pretty stunning, didn't I? I'll be back next week here on Viking TV. But until then, let's leave you with some rousing music from Julian. Let's hear the famous study by Chopin called The Revolutionary. From me, goodbye.